The Alpha King believed he was leading an expedition into forgotten mountains.
Incredible.
Oh.
I've never seen anything like it.
Oh.
A road to where?
I always believed the Covenant held fast.
She creates the path.
Behold, the Chosen. Welcome, Lyra Vale. I have been waiting. It's really you. The mirror recognized you. Welcome.
The first morning of the expedition dawned beneath a sky washed in pale gold and fading stars. Beyond the eastern walls of Eryndor, the ancient road stretched toward mountain ranges that no royal map had fully recorded. Mist drifted through the valleys like silent rivers, hiding forgotten ruins that had slept beyond memory for centuries. The palace courtyard stood unusually quiet. No musicians played. No ceremonial fanfares echoed beneath the marble arches. Only the steady sounds of saddles being tightened, wagon wheels inspected, and horses breathing in the cool morning air filled the silence. This was not a royal procession. It was a journey into uncertainty. King Rowan Ashborne emerged from the palace wearing traveling armor instead of ceremonial attire. His familiar black royal military coat remained, but a heavy dark cloak covered the silver wolf insignia to protect it from the harsh mountain weather. His sword rested comfortably at his side, and every movement reflected the calm discipline of a commander preparing for an unknown campaign. Captain Eldrick approached. "Everything is ready, Your Majesty." 30 royal guards. 2 supply wagons. Medical provisions for 6 weeks. Fresh horses every 3 days if the frontier posts remain intact. Rowan nodded. "Good. Keep the escort small. We travel quietly. No royal banners beyond the eastern border." The captain bowed immediately. "As you command." Nearby, Lyra carefully inspected bundles of dried herbs packed inside wooden medicine chests. She opened each container herself, checking every bottle and cloth wrapping before securing the leather straps once more. Prince Kaelin watched with quiet curiosity. "You inspect every bundle personally?" Lyra smiled gently without looking up. Medicine cannot fail because someone hurried. One missing herb can become someone's life. Kaelin lowered his eyes thoughtfully. "You prepare for strangers as carefully as you prepare for kings." She finally looked toward him. Pain does not recognize titles. Neither should healing. For a brief moment, Kaelin found himself unable to answer. The High Moon priest approached carrying the ancient illuminated manuscript inside a specially crafted wooden chest lined with white cloth. 2 young priests walked beside him with remarkable care, treating the manuscript as though it were alive. The old priest looked toward the eastern mountains beyond the palace walls. "The closer we travel to the sanctuary of the First Moon Priestess, the more the manuscript may reveal." Rowan glanced toward the chest. "You believe its pages are still changing?" The priest nodded. "Ancient covenants awaken gradually. The sacred moon tree did not reveal everything at once. Neither will this." A cool breeze swept through the courtyard. Almost instantly, everyone noticed something unexpected. Several silver blossoms drifted gently through the air. No wind carried them from the palace gardens. Instead, they floated directly from the sacred moon tree itself. Every blossom moved toward Lyra. Without touching the ground, they circled quietly around her before continuing eastward beyond the palace gate. The courtyard fell silent once again. Even the horses lifted their heads uneasily. Prince Kaelin followed the blossoms with his eyes. "It is showing us the road." The High Moon priest whispered softly. "No. It is following her." Lyra looked toward the disappearing petals until they vanished into the morning mist beyond the eastern road. A strange feeling settled inside her heart. Not fear. Not excitement. Recognition. As though somewhere beyond those distant mountains, someone had already been waiting for her. The eastern gates of Eryndor opened slowly as the first rays of sunlight climbed above the mountains. Without trumpets or royal ceremony, the expedition departed. Captain Aldrich led the advance guard while scouts disappeared silently into the surrounding forests. Behind them rolled 2 sturdy supply wagons carrying food, medical provisions, tents, and the ancient manuscripts secured inside its reinforced wooden chest. King Rowan rode near the center of the formation. Lyra traveled beside him on a calm chestnut mare borrowed from the royal stables. Though she had spent years crossing mountain roads with her old wagon, riding among armored royal guards still felt unfamiliar. Prince Kaelin guided his black stallion several paces ahead, studying every bend of the ancient eastern road with practiced attention. For several hours, no one spoke very much. Only birdsong, hoofbeats, and the distant sound of rushing rivers accompanied the travelers. As the sun climbed higher, the great white walls of Eryndor gradually disappeared behind rolling hills. The kingdom that had shaped Rowan's entire life faded into the distance. The High Moon Priest looked back one final time. Few kings willingly leave their own throne. Rowan kept his eyes forward. Some journeys protect a kingdom better than remaining inside it. The old priest smiled quietly. Perhaps that is why the sacred moon tree chose to awaken during your reign. By midday, the expedition entered the elderwood forest. Ancient oaks towered above the road, their enormous branches weaving together into a green cathedral of living wood. Shafts of sunlight pierced through scattered openings in the canopy, painting shifting patterns across the forest floor. The air felt noticeably cooler. Even the horses slowed instinctively. Captain Aldrich raised one hand. Tracks. Everyone halted. Several guards dismounted immediately. Fresh hoofprints crossed the road before disappearing into dense undergrowth. The captain crouched beside them. 4 riders. Perhaps 5. Less than half a day old. Rowan studied the surrounding trees. Bandits? Aldrich shook his head. Too disciplined. The spacing is military. Kaelin dismounted beside the tracks. Not military. Scouts. Northern scouts. Several guards instinctively reached for their weapons. Kaelin noticed their reactions. If they wished to attack, they would never leave tracks for us to find. The silence that followed carried far more weight than the conversation itself. Someone already knew they were coming. Before anyone could continue, one of the horses suddenly lifted its head and whinnied nervously. Another stepped sideways. The forest had become strangely quiet. No birds. No insects. Even the wind seemed to stop. Lyra slowly turned toward the trees. Something is watching us. Her voice remained soft. Yet everyone heard it. Captain Aldrich drew his sword. Royal guards immediately formed a defensive circle around the supply wagons. Rowan's hand rested calmly upon the hilt of his own sword, though he did not draw it. Then, a single silver blossom drifted gently downward from somewhere high above. It landed silently upon the ancient road. Another followed. Then another. The blossoms floated eastward one by one, forming a delicate trail disappearing deeper into the elderwood forest. No sacred moon tree stood anywhere nearby. Yet the blossoms continued appearing. The High Moon Priest stared upward in disbelief. That should be impossible. Lyra looked toward the glowing trail stretching between the ancient trees. The forest is showing us another path. Captain Aldrich stepped toward the first silver blossom lying upon the forest path. He hesitated. Your Majesty. Should we follow it? Every pair of eyes turned toward King Rowan. Before he could answer, the High Moon Priest slowly knelt beside the blossom without touching it. The tiny flower glowed with the same tranquil silver radiance that surrounded the sacred moon tree in Eryndor. It has not withered. The old priest's voice carried quiet amazement. A blossom separated from the sacred moon tree should lose its light within moments. This one still carries the covenant. Prince Kaelin studied the glowing trail disappearing into the dense forest. Perhaps these blossoms were never separated. Perhaps the covenant reaches farther than we believed. The priest looked toward him thoughtfully. You have seen this before. Kaelin remained silent for several moments. Not exactly. But in the northern kingdoms, there are old stories. Stories of sacred paths that only reveal themselves when the rightful traveler arrives. Captain Aldrich frowned. Stories are poor guides in hostile forests. Lyra slowly walked toward the nearest blossom. As before, she moved without fear. She crouched beside it, careful not to disturb the delicate petals. The blossom lifted gently from the ground before she could touch it. It floated upward until it rested at the height of her shoulder. Then it drifted forward. Another blossom rose. Then another. One after another, every silver blossom lifted gracefully into the air, forming a shimmering ribbon of light weaving between the ancient trees. The horses immediately relaxed. The nervous tension that had gripped them only moments earlier completely disappeared. Even the forest itself seemed to awaken. Birdsong gradually returned. A gentle breeze rustled through the leaves overhead. Sunlight broke through the canopy and scattered golden beams. Captain Aldrich lowered his sword. I have never seen animals trust magic. The High Moon Priest smiled faintly. Perhaps they recognize what we have forgotten. Rowan guided his horse beside Lyra. If we leave the royal road, how much farther will our journey become? Prince Kaelin examined the direction of the blossoms. Not farther. Older. Everyone looked toward him. He pointed beyond the trees. The royal road was built less than 300 years ago. But these blossoms are leading us away from it. Toward something that existed long before kingdoms drew their borders. A scout suddenly emerged from the forest ahead, breathing heavily after running back through the trees. Your Majesty. We found something. What is it? The scout swallowed before answering. A stone road. No one speaks of it on any royal map. Yet it stretches east as far as we can see. Captain Aldrich exchanged an uneasy glance with Rowan. An abandoned road? The scout slowly shook his head. No. It looks untouched. As though people stopped using it. But time itself never did. Curiosity overcame caution. Together, the expedition followed the floating blossoms through the trees. Within minutes, the dense forest opened into a broad clearing. Every member of the expedition stopped. Before them lay an enormous ancient roadway paved with smooth white stone unlike anything built in modern kingdoms. Silver moon symbols had been carved into every slab. Although moss covered much of its surface, the road remained perfectly intact. Not a single stone had shifted. Not a single crack crossed its length. Massive weathered pillars lined both sides of the forgotten highway, disappearing toward the eastern mountains like silent guardians watching over a civilization long erased from history. The High Moon Priest removed his glasses with trembling hands. His voice barely rose above a whisper. This is impossible. Prince Kaelin stared silently down the endless road. No. It is exactly where the sanctuary expected us to begin. For several long moments, no one stepped onto the forgotten road. The ancient white stone stretched toward the eastern mountains like a river of moonlight, disappearing into layers of mist beyond the horizon. Captain Aldrich dismounted first. With careful movements, he knelt beside one of the stone slabs. There are no wheel marks. No footprints. No signs of weather damage. He brushed away centuries of moss with one gloved hand. Beneath it, the carved moon sigil appeared as sharply defined as if it had been engraved only yesterday. Rowan joined him. Impossible. Stone exposed this long should have cracked generations ago. The High Moon Priest slowly approached, resting one trembling hand upon a weathered pillar. His eyes widened. This marble. It is the same stone used beneath the sacred moon tree. Silence settled across the expedition. Prince Kaelin looked along the endless avenue. Then the sanctuary was never isolated. This road connected it to the kingdoms long before our histories began. One of the younger priests examined another pillar. There are carvings here. Everyone gathered around. The reliefs had nearly vanished beneath age, but enough remained to reveal fragments of an ancient story. Women wearing silver pendants walked beside enormous flowering trees. Kings stood without crowns. Warriors laid their swords upon the ground. Above them all, moonlight descended from the heavens like flowing water. Lyra traced the carvings with her eyes. Not touching. Simply observing. Why are the kings standing without their crowns? The High Moon Priest answered quietly. Because before the covenant, even kings came as servants. Rowan studied the weathered figures for a long time. His expression became thoughtful. Perhaps that lesson was forgotten. A sudden breeze swept gently along the forgotten road. Instead of scattering randomly, the silver blossoms floating around Lyra aligned themselves into a narrow stream stretching eastward. The petals did not merely drift. They guided. Captain Aldrich frowned. It wants us to continue. Before anyone moved, one of the royal guards called out. Movement. Far ahead. Every hand instinctively moved toward sword hilts. In the distance, nearly half a mile away, a solitary figure stood motionless upon the ancient road. Too far away to distinguish clearly. Wrapped in pale robes. Watching them. No horse. No weapons. Only stillness. Captain Aldrich narrowed his eyes. Scout? Prince Kalen slowly shook his head. No. Scouts hide. That person wants to be seen. The mysterious figure neither approached nor retreated. For several silent seconds, both sides remained perfectly still. Then, as a cloud passed before the sun, a veil of mist drifted across the ancient roadway. The figure vanished. Not by running. Simply. Gone. Several guards immediately rushed forward. After searching the road for nearly 10 minutes, they returned. Nothing. No footprints. No camp. No horse. Captain Aldrich looked genuinely unsettled. A man cannot disappear from an open road. The High Moon Priest spoke almost to himself. Unless. He never belonged to this road in the same way we do. Lyra looked toward the place where the figure had stood. Something deep within her stirred. Not recognition of a face. Recognition of a presence. As if whoever had watched them had not come to stop their journey, but to confirm. They had finally begun it. No one spoke as the expedition resumed its march. The ancient road stretched endlessly before them, disappearing beneath towering trees whose branches arched overhead like the ceiling of a forgotten cathedral. The mysterious figure had vanished. Yet the feeling of being observed remained. Captain Aldrich quietly repositioned the royal guards. 2 scouts moved ahead. 4 guarded the supply wagons. The remaining soldiers formed a protective ring around Lyra, the High Moon Priest, and the ancient manuscript. Rowan noticed the adjustment. You believe someone is still nearby? Aldrich answered without looking away from the forest. I believe someone wanted us to know they were nearby. There is a difference. The journey continued through the afternoon. Unlike the royal road, the ancient highway seemed untouched by nature despite centuries of abandonment. Grass never grew between its stones. No fallen branches blocked the way. Even leaves drifting from the trees landed beside the roadway instead of upon it. Prince Kalen finally broke the silence. Have any of you noticed? Lyra looked around. Noticed what? Listen. Everyone stopped. The forest echoed with birdsong. Leaves rustled gently in the breeze. A distant stream flowed somewhere beyond the trees. But upon the ancient road itself, their footsteps made almost no sound. The horses' hooves landed softly against the white stone. The wagon wheels rolled without their usual creaking. It was as though the road absorbed every noise. The High Moon Priest closed his eyes. The path of silence. Captain Aldrich looked toward him. You've heard of it? Only in fragments. Very old fragments. He opened his eyes once more. Legends claimed the Moon Priestesses walked a sacred road where the world itself remained quiet, so travelers could hear the truth within their own hearts. Several guards exchanged uncertain glances. No one laughed. After everything they had already witnessed, old legends no longer seemed impossible. As the sun drifted westward, the road curved gently around a low hillside. Beyond it stood 12 enormous stone statues. Every traveler instinctively slowed. Each statue towered nearly 20 feet high. Weathered by time, yet still majestic. They depicted armored guardians standing with swords lowered and heads respectfully bowed. Not toward an enemy. Toward the road itself. Rowan dismounted. He approached the nearest statue. Its armor resembled no kingdom he recognized. The wolf insignia of House Ashborne was absent. So were the emblems of every neighboring realm. Instead, each breastplate bore only a single symbol. A crescent moon embraced by flowering branches. Prince Kaelin stepped beside him. The guardians of the Covenant. Rowan looked toward him. You recognize them? Only from unfinished drawings preserved in the northern archives. He studied the silent stone faces. I never believed they truly existed. Lyra slowly walked among the statues. Despite their immense size, none appeared threatening. Their expressions were calm. Almost peaceful. As though they had willingly laid down their weapons after completing a sacred duty. Then she stopped. One statue was different. Unlike the others, its stone hands did not rest upon a sword. Instead, they cradled a small carved bowl. Inside the bowl rested fresh water. Crystal clear. Captain Aldrich frowned. Impossible. There has been no rain for days. One of the guards carefully dipped 2 fingers into the water. Cold. Fresh. The High Moon Priest stepped forward. Do not drink. The guard immediately withdrew his hand. The old priest examined the bowl closely. No leaves floated upon its surface. No dust. No insects. The water appeared untouched. Almost protected. Lyra gazed into the reflection. For a brief instant, she thought she saw another face beside her own. A young woman. Long silver-lit hair. Gentle emerald eyes. Wearing robes unlike anything from the modern kingdoms. Lyra blinked. The reflection returned to normal. Only her own face remained. She took a slow breath. Did anyone else? Before she could finish, the ancient manuscript inside the supply wagon suddenly began glowing through the closed wooden chest. A soft silver light escaped between the seams. The High Moon Priest's eyes widened. It has awakened again. Every member of the expedition turned toward the wagon. For the second time since leaving Eryndor, the ancient covenant was preparing to reveal another forgotten truth. The silver light pouring from the manuscript spread across the interior of the supply wagon like moonlight flowing over still water. No one moved. Even the horses stood unusually calm. The High Moon Priest carefully unlocked the wooden chest with trembling hands. As the lid slowly opened, the ancient manuscript revealed itself once more. Its weathered leather cover shimmered faintly. Pages that had remained blank only hours earlier now glowed with delicate silver writing. The ink did not appear to have been written. It emerged. Stroke by stroke. As though invisible hands were recording words that had waited centuries to be spoken. The old priest leaned closer. His breathing slowed. The first line has changed. Rowan stepped beside him. Read it. The priest nodded. His voice remained steady despite the emotion in his eyes. When the path of silence is walked by the bearer of the covenant, the 12 guardians shall awaken in memory before they awaken in stone. Captain Aldrich looked toward the towering statues surrounding the roadway. Awaken? The priest continued reading. Those who seek the sanctuary without greed shall pass beneath their gaze. Those who seek power alone shall never see the road that follows. Silence settled over the expedition. Prince Kalen slowly turned toward the ancient highway stretching eastward. So the road itself is judging us. Not judging. The High Moon Priest gently closed the manuscript. Choosing. Lyra remained thoughtful. The difference mattered. Judgment looked backward. Choice looked forward. Captain Aldrich studied his soldiers. Every one of them had entered the ancient road. None had been turned away. That realization brought him unexpected comfort. Perhaps the Covenant had accepted them more readily than they deserved. A faint vibration suddenly traveled beneath their feet. Barely noticeable. Then another. Several horses shifted uneasily. The wagon wheels rattled softly against the white stone. One of the younger guards instinctively reached for his sword. The ground. Did you feel that? Everyone did. The vibration grew stronger for only a few heartbeats before fading once more into complete stillness. No cracks appeared in the road. No tree swayed. Nothing else changed. Captain Aldrich frowned. That was no earthquake. Prince Kalen knelt and placed one hand against the ancient stone. His expression slowly changed. Something moved beneath us. Rowan looked toward him. How deep? I cannot tell. But it was not passing beneath the road. It was traveling with it. The words unsettled everyone. The High Moon Priest looked once more toward the 12 statues. Perhaps memory is not the only thing awakening. Before anyone could answer, Lyra noticed something unusual. The clear water resting inside the stone bowl carried by the nearest guardian had begun to ripple. Not from the vibration. From within. Tiny circles spread gently across its surface despite the complete absence of wind. She stepped closer. The reflection returned. This time it did not disappear. The young woman with silver-lit hair looked directly back at her. Her expression carried warmth. And unmistakable relief. Slowly, the woman raised one hand. Not toward Lyra. Toward the eastern horizon. Then the image dissolved into ripples. The water became ordinary once again. Lyra stood motionless. Rowan quietly approached. What did you see? She answered without hesitation. Someone who has been waiting a very long time. The High Moon Priest closed his eyes. The manuscript speaks. The road responds. Now the guardians remember. He looked toward the fading sunlight filtering through the forest canopy. The sanctuary is no longer sleeping. It knows we are coming. Far beyond the reach of human sight, hidden among the eastern mountains, a single silver bell rang once. Its sound was too distant for any member of the expedition to hear. Yet across forgotten temples reclaimed by vines, ancient moon symbols quietly began to glow. One after another. Like stars awakening before the coming of night. Twilight settled gently over the ancient road. The last rays of sunlight slipped behind the towering trees, leaving ribbons of silver and violet stretched across the evening sky. Captain Aldrich surveyed the surrounding forest. We make camp here. No one objected. The clearing beside the 12 guardians offered the most defensible position they had seen since entering the Forgotten Road. Royal guards immediately went to work. Canvas tents rose in orderly rows. Cooking fires were carefully contained within circles of stone. The horses were watered and fed before being tethered near the wagons. Despite the growing darkness, an unusual sense of peace settled over the camp. No wolves howled. No predators stirred within the forest. Even the night insects sang with gentle rhythm instead of restless urgency. It was as though the ancient road itself stood watch over every traveler resting upon it. Lyra moved quietly between the soldiers, tending to sore muscles, blistered hands, and aching shoulders after the long day's journey. One young guard tried to hide a swollen wrist. She noticed immediately. You have been favoring your left hand since noon. The embarrassed guard smiled sheepishly. I hoped no one would notice. Lyra carefully examined the injury. You tightened the wagon axle yourself this morning. Too much force. The guard looked surprised. How did you know? The calluses on your right hand are older. The bruise is fresh. She gently wrapped the wrist with clean linen before applying a cooling herbal paste. Rest it tonight. Otherwise tomorrow will be much harder. The young soldier bowed gratefully. Thank you. Several nearby guards exchanged amused smiles. None of them understood how she observed so much while speaking so little. Rowan watched the quiet exchange from beside the campfire. Leadership could command loyalty. Compassion earned it. The High Moon Priest sat near the manuscript, studying the newest silver writing beneath the light of an oil lantern. Every hour another line appeared. None of us are writing these words. Yet they continue. Prince Kalen lowered himself beside the old priest. What does it say now? The priest slowly read the newest passage. When memory returns, the first keeper shall no longer walk alone. Kalen considered the sentence carefully. First keeper. Not first priestess. The priest nodded. A different title. Perhaps an older one. Older than the sanctuary itself. The manuscript is teaching us a history even our oldest records forgot. Rowan joined them. Can it identify this first keeper? The priest gently closed the manuscript. Not yet. It reveals only what we are prepared to understand. After the evening meal, darkness fully embraced the forest. The moon slowly rose above the eastern mountains. Its pale light touched the ancient road. Immediately, the white stones began reflecting a faint silver glow. Not brightly. Just enough to illuminate the forgotten path stretching endlessly through the trees. One by one, every moon sigil carved into the roadway shimmered softly. Captain Aldrich stared in disbelief. No torches. Yet we can see the road. One of the older guards whispered almost reverently. It remembers the moon. Lyra stepped beyond the campfire and looked toward the glowing highway. The silver blossoms surrounding her during the day had disappeared. She wondered if their task had ended. Then she noticed movement. Tiny lights floated among the trees. Hundreds of them. At first they resembled fireflies. But as they drifted closer, their shapes became clear. Each was a tiny silver petal glowing with gentle moonlight. They circled silently above the camp. Never touching the travelers. Never disturbing the horses. Simply watching. The High Moon Priest smiled. Moon spirits. Captain Aldrich raised an eyebrow. You truly believe that? The old priest shook his head gently. I believe our ancestors lacked better words for what they witnessed. Near midnight, most of the expedition had fallen asleep. Only the sentries remained awake. Rowan stood alone beside one of the ancient statues, looking east. Footsteps approached quietly. Lyra stopped beside him. You are not sleeping. Neither are you. She smiled faintly. Too many questions. He nodded in understanding. For a while they simply watched the moonlit road together. Finally Rowan spoke. When I was a child, I believed kings carried all the answers. Now I know they simply carry the responsibility of searching for them. Lyra looked toward the glowing road. Perhaps that is why this journey found you. Not because you already knew the way. Because you were willing to follow it. Rowan turned toward her. Before he could answer, a distant light appeared far along the ancient highway. Small. Golden. Moving slowly toward their camp. Not floating. Walking. Captain Aldrich saw it at the same moment. He immediately rose from his post. Movement ahead. Every sentry quietly reached for a weapon. The approaching light grew brighter with each passing moment. At its center walked a lone traveler carrying an old bronze lantern. The figure wore a weathered gray cloak dusted with the pale powder of mountain roads. No horse. No escort. Only the lantern and a long wooden staff. When the traveler reached the edge of the moonlit camp, the person stopped. Without fear. without hesitation. Then a calm, elderly voice broke the silence. I had been waiting many years for the bearer of the covenant to arrive. Every eye turned toward Lyra. The camp remained perfectly still. No swords were drawn. Yet every royal guard stood ready. The elderly traveler rested both hands upon the weathered wooden staff, allowing the bronze lantern to hang quietly from one wrist. Its warm golden light contrasted gently with the cool silver glow surrounding the ancient road. Captain Aldrich stepped forward. Identify yourself. The old man smiled kindly. Names have little meaning after enough years. Still, those who once lived here called me Aemon. Caretaker. Nothing more. His voice carried neither fear nor arrogance. Only quiet certainty. Rowan studied the stranger carefully. No weapon. No armor. No visible sign of deception. Yet there was something unusual. The years seemed unable to settle upon him. His silver hair was long. His face bore the lines of great age. But his posture remained remarkably strong, as though time had chosen to slow rather than weaken him. The High Moon Priest stepped closer. Caretaker. Of what? The old man slowly lifted his lantern. Its light reflected softly across the white stones beneath his feet. Of the road. Of the silence. Of those who still remember the covenant. Silence followed. Prince Kaelin watched the old man with growing curiosity. You knew we would come. Aemon nodded. Not today. Not tomorrow. Only that one day. The road would awaken again. His gaze finally settled upon Lyra. And when it did, she would walk upon it. Lyra felt no fear. Instead, an unexpected peace settled over her heart. Have we met before? The old caretaker smiled gently. Not in this lifetime. The words hung in the cool night air. No one spoke. The High Moon Priest looked thoughtfully toward the glowing manuscript. Perhaps? Memory reaches farther than birth. Aemon inclined his head slightly. A wise conclusion. Captain Aldrich remained cautious. If you have watched this road for years, why reveal yourself now? The caretaker looked toward the moonlit highway stretching eastward. Because until tonight, the road belonged only to memory. Now, it belongs to the living once again. He slowly turned toward the 12 stone guardians surrounding the clearing. They have waited faithfully. Longer than any king. Longer than any kingdom. Longer even than I. Rowan followed his gaze. Who built this place? The old man answered without hesitation. Those who understood that power could preserve a kingdom. But only compassion could preserve a people. Lyra quietly lowered her eyes. The words felt strangely familiar. Almost as though she had heard them somewhere long ago. Aemon approached the nearest guardian statue. He placed one weathered hand upon the carved stone bowl. The clear water inside remained perfectly still. Then, without speaking a single word, he gently touched the surface with one fingertip. A single ripple spread outward. The ripple did not stop at the edge of the bowl. Instead, silver light flowed across the entire statue. The ancient guardian shimmered softly beneath the moonlight. Then another statue answered. Then another. One by one. All 12 guardians glowed with the same gentle radiance. Not awakening. Remembering. Captain Aldrich instinctively stepped backward. By every oath. The statues are alive. Aemon shook his head. No. Life left them long ago. Duty did not. The silver light gradually faded. The statues became motionless once again. Yet something had undeniably changed. Every stone face now appeared softer. Almost peaceful. As though recognizing friends after an unimaginably long separation. The caretaker looked toward Lyra once more. There is something you must see before reaching the sanctuary. The High Moon Priest exchanged a glance with Rowan. You expected this. Aemon smiled. The sanctuary prepares every traveler differently. For kings, it asks humility. For scholars, it asks patience. For warriors, it asks restraint. Then his eyes rested gently upon Lyra. For the bearer of the covenant, it asks remembrance. Lyra took a slow breath. Remembrance of what? The old caretaker raised his lantern toward the eastern mountains. Of the promise you made. Before history forgot your name. A cool wind swept across the clearing. The ancient manuscript suddenly opened by itself inside the supply wagon. Its pages turned rapidly until they stopped at a blank sheet. Silver words slowly appeared across the parchment. Not written by ink. Written by light. The High Moon priest read them aloud with quiet reverence. When the keeper reaches the mirror of the first dawn, the past shall no longer remain silent. The camp fell into complete stillness. Far beyond the forest, hidden among the eastern peaks, a faint silver glow rose briefly above the mountains before fading into the night. Aemon watched it without surprise. Then he spoke the words that none of them expected. We leave before sunrise. The mirror has already begun waiting. Before the first hint of dawn touched the eastern sky, the expedition quietly prepared to depart. The campfires had burned down to glowing embers. A cool mist drifted between the ancient statues, wrapping the forgotten road in pale silver. No one needed to be awakened. Every member of the expedition had slept lightly, as though the road itself had whispered that an important day was about to begin. Captain Aldrich inspected the perimeter one final time. No footprints. No disturbances. Even the forest remained unusually calm. He returned to Rowan. Nothing approached during the night. The king glanced toward Aemon, who stood patiently beside his bronze lantern. Or perhaps nothing was permitted to. The old caretaker answered with a gentle smile. Some places protect themselves better than armies ever could. As the expedition resumed its journey, Aemon walked at the front beside the floating ribbon of silver blossoms. Despite his age, his steps remained steady. He never hesitated. Never searched for the path. It was as though he had walked this road so many times that every stone remembered him. Prince Kaelin eventually caught up beside the old caretaker. How long have you guarded this place? Aemon remained silent for several moments. Long enough to watch kingdoms rise from villages. Long enough to watch proud banners become forgotten names. Long enough to understand that only promises truly survive history. Kaelin lowered his eyes thoughtfully. Then you have lived beyond any ordinary lifetime. The caretaker simply smiled. Time measures the body. Not always the purpose. The ancient road gradually climbed higher into the eastern mountains. The forest slowly changed around them. Massive oak trees gave way to towering silver pines whose bark shimmered softly beneath the morning light. Crystal streams crossed beneath beautifully carved stone bridges that no map had ever recorded. Every bridge carried the same crescent moon surrounded by flowering branches. Not one had collapsed. Not one required repair. Captain Aldrich examined the nearest bridge with genuine disbelief. Who maintained these roads? Aemon answered without slowing. Those who built them trusted memory more than maintenance. The captain frowned. Stone cannot repair itself. The old caretaker gently touched one of the ancient railings. No. But a covenant can preserve what was built with honest purpose. By mid-morning, the mountains opened into a breathtaking valley. The entire expedition stopped without being commanded. Before them stretched an enormous lake as clear as polished crystal. Its surface reflected the surrounding peaks so perfectly that sky and water became almost indistinguishable. No waves disturbed its stillness. No birds flew across it. The silence felt sacred rather than empty. Lyra instinctively whispered. It is beautiful. Aemon nodded. This is the Lake of Quiet Stars. The High Moon priest stared across the water. There is no mention of such a place in our oldest records. Because your oldest records were written after this place had already been forgotten. The old caretaker pointed toward the opposite shore. There. Everyone followed his hand. Across the lake, partially hidden beneath climbing vines and silver-leaved trees, stood the graceful remains of an ancient temple. Unlike ordinary ruins, it appeared almost untouched. White marble columns still reached proudly toward the sky. Silver banners carved into stone fluttered only in memory. At the very center stood a circular structure open to the heavens. The High Moon Priest inhaled sharply. The mirror of the first dawn. Aemon inclined his head. Yes. The first threshold before the sanctuary. A narrow stone causeway stretched across the perfectly still lake. Its white surface gleamed beneath the morning sun. Yet something immediately felt strange. Halfway across, the bridge simply disappeared. Not broken. Not collapsed. Gone. The remaining distance between the causeway and the temple stood empty above the water. Captain Aldrich narrowed his eyes. There is no way across. Aemon calmly stepped onto the causeway. There is. You simply cannot see it yet. He continued walking toward the missing section without hesitation. Several guards instinctively called out. Stop. The bridge ends. But Aemon never slowed. He took one final step beyond the visible stone. Instead of falling, his foot landed upon empty air. Silver light spread beneath his boots. Another invisible stone appeared. Then another. With every step he took, a new section of the hidden bridge revealed itself, glowing softly before becoming solid white marble. The path had never vanished. It had only remained unseen. Every member of the expedition watched in silent amazement. Aemon turned back toward them. The Covenant does not hide the way. It waits until travelers are ready to believe that the way exists. Then he looked directly at Lyra. Come. Only the bearer may reveal the rest. Lyra stood motionless for a heartbeat. The hidden bridge stretched into empty space before her, ending where visibility itself surrendered to faith. Without another word, she stepped forward. Lyra's foot descended toward what appeared to be empty air. For a single heartbeat, nothing existed beneath her. Then the world answered. Silver light blossomed beneath her boot, unfolding into solid white marble as smoothly as moonlight spreading across still water. A soft gasp escaped several members of the expedition. Another step. Another section of the hidden bridge appeared. Each stone emerged only after Lyra committed herself to moving forward. Never before. Never after. Captain Aldrich watched in astonishment. The path is responding to her. Aemon smiled quietly. No. It is remembering her. Lyra continued walking. With every step, delicate moon sigils shimmered briefly beneath her feet before fading into polished stone. The invisible bridge revealed itself farther and farther across the lake until a graceful pathway stretched toward the ancient temple. Only then did Aemon motion for the others to follow. One by one, the expedition stepped onto the newly revealed bridge. The marble remained firm beneath every traveler. Safe. Silent. Certain. No one spoke. Some moments demanded reverence instead of conversation. Halfway across the lake of quiet stars, Lyra instinctively stopped. The water beneath the bridge remained perfectly still. She looked downward. Instead of her reflection, she saw another sky. Countless silver stars shimmered beneath the surface despite the daylight above. They did not resemble ordinary stars. They formed patterns. Circles. Branches. Flowing lines that slowly intertwined. The High Moon Priest looked over the edge of the bridge. His eyes widened. Those are not constellations. Prince Kaelin studied the glowing shapes. No. They are memories. The old priest looked toward him. How can you know that? Kaelin answered without taking his eyes from the water. Because they change whenever she moves. Lyra cautiously took another step. The silver lights beneath the lake shifted once again. Entire patterns rearranged themselves, following her progress toward the temple. As though the lake itself were reading something hidden inside her heart. When they reached the opposite shore, the air felt different. Lighter. Clearer. Every breath carried the scent of wild flowers despite the absence of gardens. Ancient white columns surrounded the temple courtyard. None had fallen. None showed signs of neglect. Instead, climbing vines wrapped gently around the marble as though protecting it rather than reclaiming it. Birds nested peacefully among the upper arches. Crystal water flowed through narrow channels carved into the stone floor, producing a quiet melody that echoed beneath the open sky. Captain Aldrich removed his gloves and rested one hand upon a nearby column. Warm. The stone is warm. Despite the cool mountain air, it still carries warmth. Eamon nodded. This place has never truly been abandoned. Only forgotten. At the center of the courtyard stood a perfectly circular platform carved from flawless white marble. Its surface reflected the morning sky like polished glass. No dust. No cracks. No leaves disturbed its mirror-like finish. The High Moon Priest approached slowly. His voice barely rose above a whisper. The mirror of the first dawn. The manuscript spoke truth. Eamon remained at the edge of the platform. Beyond this point, only the bearer may enter first. Every eye turned toward Lyra. She hesitated. Not from fear. From humility. Rowan stepped beside her. Whatever waits here, you will not face it alone. She smiled gently. I know. But some doors can only be opened by one person. He inclined his head. Then we will be here when you return. Lyra walked alone toward the center of the circular platform. The moment both feet rested upon the polished marble, the reflection beneath her changed. The blue morning sky disappeared. Instead, the surface became an endless silver horizon stretching beyond sight. A gentle breeze circled the platform. The silver moon pendant resting against her chest began glowing with increasing brilliance. Around the courtyard, every ancient moon sigil awakened. Soft light flowed through the carved channels in the marble like rivers of liquid silver. The 12 distant guardian statues answered with a faint glow visible across the valley. Even the hidden bridge behind them shimmered once more. The Covenant had recognized its keeper. Then, the mirror rippled. Not outward. Inward. A woman slowly emerged from the silver surface as though rising through calm water. She appeared no older than Lyra. Her long silver-lit hair flowed gently around robes embroidered with ancient moon sigils. Emerald eyes filled with kindness met Lyra's without surprise. Only relief. For several silent moments, neither woman spoke. It felt less like strangers meeting, and more like two separated memories becoming whole again. At last, the woman smiled. Welcome home, Keeper. As her voice faded across the sacred courtyard, the silver horizon behind her began revealing the first forgotten memories of a civilization erased from history. And far beyond the eastern mountains, hidden behind clouds no map had ever marked, the sanctuary of the First Moon Priestess slowly awakened.